Hi, welcome to Oma's Kitchen.
Oregano.
Let's make a German strudel with fresh pears and homemade marzipan. We assemble the dough first so it can hang out a little bit on the counter while we put the rest of the ingredients together. This doesn't have any sugar in it, this dough. German desserts and European desserts tend to be about half as sweet as American desserts. This allows the pear and marzipan flavors to come through. This recipe really relies on a little bit of sugar in the filling and some powdered sugar on top to make it sweet. So you'll see I have some slightly softened butter there, 6 tablespoons, and I have the flour in my mixer bowl. And then I will add an egg, a pinch of salt, and some water. I start with a half a cup of water, but you may have to add a little more. What you're looking for is a slightly sticky dough at the end. Here's the recipe for you. This is just the recipe for the dough, not the filling. And my stand mixer likes to help me make a mess in my kitchen. I can tell that I need to add some water to the dough because I'm looking for a very soft, pliable, slightly sticky dough. So I'm going to add a tablespoon or so and mix it some more and see how it comes out. And now it's a soft, pliable, and slightly sticky dough. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Let's get rid of my dough hook. And then we're going to take the bowl, show you the dough there real quick. And we're going to cover this over nice and tight and leave it on the counter for a good 20 to 30 minutes. Letting it rest on the counter helps the glutens to line up together and makes the dough more pliable and easier to work with. Make sure to cover it tightly so your dough doesn't dry out while you let it rest. I have a couple of pears that are overripe and fixing to go over to the bad side, but I'm not going to let them. I'm going to use them. They're very soft. And I'm really just going to peel them, core them, and cut them into chunks. We're going to mix this in with our homemade marzipan. Here's the recipe for you. A lot of people don't know that marzipan is really just almond flour, almond extract, and either sugar or honey. I can use the fresh pears in the marzipan without them taking over. There's such a mild flavor that when the strudel comes out, you can actually taste both the pears and the marzipan in the filling. It goes so well together. Now we can put together the homemade marzipan. In the recipe, I have 1/2 to 2/3 cup of almond flour. This will depend on how juicy your pears are. You want to end up with a paste because you want it to be the consistency of marzipan, even with the chunks of pear in it. So I'm going to start with 1/2 cup of almond flour, but I'll probably end up putting another tablespoon or so in. I'm only starting with 2 tablespoons of sugar. I will put the 3rd tablespoon in later. And I'm starting with a 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract, but I ended up using a teaspoon of almond extract and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And there's my other teaspoon of sugar going in. And I mix this together and make sure it will stick together like a paste. And there's our homemade pear marzipan filling. Once the strudel is assembled, it will need an egg wash. So I'm going to use the yolk of 1 egg, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of water to it. And this will be what I brush over the crust before it goes in the oven. So along with the egg wash, you will also need some powdered sugar for when it comes out of the oven. And for the assembly, you'll need a couple tablespoons of melted butter and a little bit of peach preserves or apricot preserves or even orange marmalade. We're going to brush that all over the inside of the dough, you'll see. So here's my 2 tablespoons of butter, and I will melt that in the microwave. I also have some peach preserves I'm using, but they've been in the refrigerator. So I'll take the top off of those and warm them a little in the microwave as well. Time to put it all together. Preheat your oven to 360 degrees. And I'm going to spread out some flour onto a piece of parchment paper, which is on one of my cutting boards. This helps me gauge the size of the dough. I'm going to roll it out really, really thin. You want it as square and as thin as possible, but to have it still fit on your cookie sheet to go in the oven. This is a heavy, thick, and soft dough. It's very easy to roll out, but you don't want to roll it out too thin. You want it as thin as possible, but to keep it about the size of a rectangular cutting board. Here's my 2 tablespoons of butter. I've melted it in the microwave. And now I'm going to brush it onto the strudel dough that I've rolled out. Just try to evenly brush it on there, but not all the way to the edges. You want to be able to seal the edges and not have the butter keep it from sealing. And here's my warmed preserves. I'm going to use about 1/4 cup. Spread out all over the dough, also not to the edges. You want to leave about a 1/2 inch or 1 inch gap all the way around. In German, Strudel actually means swirl. Let's tamp down the ISO on the camera and see if I can get you a better look at the jam spread out on the dough. So now it's time to add our pear marzipan filling. We're going to pile that up in a line along the edge of the dough, about 2 inches wide, and the length of the dough. This is so we can roll up the dough around it, or make a strudel. All right, and that's all of our filling. I'm going to use the parchment paper underneath to help me roll the dough around the filling. Now, you have to roll a strudel very tightly, and you'll see why at the end of this video. If you don't roll it tight enough, there are going to be places where the dough comes away from itself, and it may leak a little bit. I rolled this fairly tightly, but there was still a part of it that came away from itself in the oven. It still came out great, you'll see. Once it's completely rolled, use the parchment paper to roll it on its side a bit and pinch the seam together underneath. Then roll it back and reshape a little bit. And then you're going to want to pinch down the sides and roll them under the dough. This seals up your strudel. Use a large spatula to help you transfer your strudel onto a parchment-lined cookie sheet. Reshape a little, and then cut a couple of air holes in the top, but keep them small. Don't cut all the way through. You want to keep your filling in your strudel. Then it's time for the egg wash that you made. Use a brush and brush it all across the top and down onto the sides a little bit as well. This helps your strudel brown in the oven. Bake it in the oven at 360 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 to 50 minutes. And here it is. It browned up so nicely in the oven. Remember when I said if you don't roll it tight enough, some parts of it will break away from itself? That's what happened here. It's still beautiful. It got nice and crispy on top. And we're going to add powdered sugar while it's still warm. So I'm going to use my big spatula and transfer it over to my plate. Pull the parchment out from underneath of it. And then we're going to add the powdered sugar on top. And don't be shy with the powdered sugar. Remember, not a lot of sugar goes into the filling for this. So the powdered sugar on top really helps with the sweetness. And isn't it beautiful? Let's cut off an end and see what it looks like inside. The crust got crispy and the inside is soft and wonderful with pear and marzipan flavors. We had ours with whipped cream, but it would go great with vanilla ice cream as well. And that's our pear marzipan strudel. Thank you for joining me in Oma's Kitchen. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll upload more tasty videos soon, and a special shout out to Moon Pie and Lil Bit. Till next time.
Oregano.